الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, viewers. My name is Sumaya Hassan and welcome to Aspire. In today's session, I would like us to talk about tips for managing our busy lives. Sometimes we have so much going on in our lives that it feels like we are running from one point to another without any time to think or reflect or plan. The problem with not planning, though, is like somebody who says, I'm too busy driving to stop for fuel. One day your car will run out of fuel. And then how will you reach where you're planning to go? So one of the ways to manage a very busy schedule is to plan. And that doesn't matter whether you are out in the workplace, whether you're out in the market, whether you're out in the farm, whether you're in the house, anytime where you have a number of things that you need to manage, you need to do, then plan. And this is one of the ways to help yourself to succeed. As we start, there are certain things that some general principles, for instance, before we look at some very specific tasks. One of the things that is helpful for you to do in planning around your busy schedule is to be able to itemize the tasks that you seek to do and separate them. Take somewhere where you write it, whether it's on your phone or your tab or a pen and paper, and write down what is urgent, what is important, what is not urgent but important, what is urgent but not important. So separate where you have one column that is both urgent and important. Then you have a second column which is urgent but not important. And then you have a third column which is not urgent but important, and then you have a final column, not urgent and not important. The importance of doing that is to really help you separate the different things that are calling for your attention into categories to help you determine which are the things that you really should start prioritizing and which are the ones that you can do at a later time and which are the ones that you should not do at all. So the things that appear as both urgent and important obviously are things that are probably really calling out for your attention to deal with them very quickly. However, by planning, inshallah, hopefully this helps you to not have too many things in that category. You should not have a long list of items that are all urgent and important. You really shouldn't. As you begin to plan yourself better and you execute better, that list should be very short and only items that come up every once in a while. What you do want to have is more of your things being on the list that is not urgent but is important. So you're not under pressure. You must do it now, but they are important and now you can plan how to do them. The fourth category of items that are not urgent and not important. My question to you is, why are you doing them? Why would you invest any of your time or resources working on matters that are neither urgent nor important unless you can see that they really are feeding into other things that are important for you to do? You want to be careful about that last column, because if you're not careful, you may find an inordinate amount of time is actually just being wasted on you doing things that you should not be doing in the first place. So that's one general principle. The other thing as well is look for simple solutions to problems that are recurring. So if, for example, you find every time you go to work, your phone runs out of charge and you've forgotten your charger at home, why would you allow that to stress you every single day? What you should do is just buy another charger and leave it in the office or in your workplace. So then you don't have to go through this drama every day of, oh, my phone will discharge and the charger is at home. Put a charger in your office, have a charger at home, or have a battery pack. If you're a person that has to travel regularly because of what it is that you do, you're always on the road, one of the simple ways to make your life easier on yourself, have a standard packing list. so that you don't find you've traveled hundreds of miles to another place. Oh, I forgot something that's so important. Have a list. And if you have a suitcase that you normally use for your trip, leave that list in there. So every time you're packing, pull out your list. Number 1, 2, 3, 4. You make your life so much easier on yourself rather than trying to remember every single time what it is you need to pack and then you realize you've forgotten. The other thing as well, when you're working with teams at your workplace, for example, or even family members at home, amongst yourself, look out for the issues that are recurring. What are these things that we are always having a challenge with? Oh, we only realize in the morning when people come for breakfast, we forgot to buy milk. Okay, so if those recurring issues, you manage to make a note of them, then you agree how you're going to deal with them before, so that you have a standard way of dealing with them. It avoids a lot of unnecessary pressure on yourself and frees up your time for the things that actually do need you to spend time on, as opposed to commonly recurring mistakes. So, what are some of the tips we can use to help all of us manage our busy schedules? Number 1, don't overestimate the number of things that you can get done in a day. So, I encourage you to have a to-do list. These are the items that I want to do today. But how should you do it? Should you have like 100 items to do and then you'll feel, a sense of achievement? I have everything on your list. What I would encourage you to do, try and have a 1-3-5 to-do list. 1-3-5. 1 stands for one major task. Every day, write down one major task that you intend to do that day. And then write down 3 medium-sized tasks that you want to do that day. And finally, write down 5 small tasks that you want to do that day. If you can have your personal 1-3-5 to-do list every day and actually go through it and do it, it means by the end of the week, you will have accomplished, depending whether you're looking at a working week or the full week, 5 to 7 major tasks. You will have accomplished 15 to 21 medium-sized tasks, and you will have accomplished anything from 25 to 35 small-sized tasks. Just by you being very organized and ensuring every single day you have a to-do list that is itemized like that. Now, is there any magic behind the number 1-3-5? No. There isn't. You could decide to do 2-4-6. You could decide to do, 1-4-8. It's really up to you. The point is, make your list manageable. Try to have one major task done every day, maybe 3 around 4 medium-sized tasks, and maybe 5 to 6, perhaps 7 smaller tasks, so that you have a list that is manageable. Because, and linking this to the second tip, once you have finished your items on the list, tick them off or cross them off. It is such a wonderful sense of achievement when you go through your list and you finish it. It's just wonderful. And we see this even, when we look at what we are told about the person who has been fasting, and we are told, he has 2 rewards. When you finish your fast, you feel such a wonderful sense of achievement. And then, of course, when you meet your Lord, you're also expecting an achievement. So being able to finish something, a task, just gives us a wonderful sense of achievement. So cross it off. The other tip, if you have an item that is so big, a project, for instance, that is very huge, rather than just write down, maybe you're building a house. Now you have a to-do list and say build a house. What is the probability that you will finish that in one day? You will not. So break that down into smaller items that you can then keep track of your progress. What do you need to do first on your list when you're talking about a big project? If your to-do list is geared towards getting you a job, rather than write on your list, find a job, what you should be doing is breaking it down to apply for a job. So at least that you can do and tick off. And then the next item would be perhaps gathering your testimonials and your reference checks, whatever it is that will help you lead to that process. preparing for the interview for you in the job that you're seeking. So break down a bigger task into smaller items that are actually practical to do. Also consider which items need you to do them personally and which items can you outsource. There are certain things that are not in your area of expertise, neither are they in your area of maybe competence or interest, or there is somebody else who is already doing something along those similar lines, and it just makes sense to request them to handle that. Now, I'm not talking about you getting lazy and trying to get other people to handle your to-do list for you, but I am saying be very aware of which items on your to-do list you should do yourself and which items you can outsource. One other tip I would like to share with you: look at your to-do list and pick out which item you don't like at all. Your least favorite item on your to-do list. The one that you cringe even trying to get yourself to think of how to do this. And then do that one first. The item that you really don't like, get it out of the way. This will motivate you to come around and do the other things. What happens when you leave the thing that you don't like for last, it drags down your whole day, because every time you're thinking about it, it's like this weight on your back, thinking of this item that I have to come and deal with later in the day, and I really don't want to do it. So reverse that around, start with that, get it out of the way. You'll be amazed how much lighter and how much more energetic you feel for the rest of the day, just because you have already dealt with the item that you didn't like first. At the same time, make the halfway of your day, say lunchtime, be the point by which you should have finished your major task. To the extent possible, make that the point by which you have finished the major task that you set out for your day, so that now you have the rest of your day, you're managing your medium to smaller size tasks. Having said that, be also very clear about your personal timing. There are some people who are very energetic first thing in the morning, and that is the time you really should then do your big tasks. There are some people later on in the day is when they pick up. So understand yourself clearly as well, to enable you have a scheduling that actually makes sense for you, because we are not all the same, but you do know yourself. Once a week, and this could be the day before you start your work week, whenever that is, spend time to make a list of the key things you intend to do the whole week. Once a week, plan out your entire week in terms of key items you need to do. What are the big items? What are your medium-sized items? What are your smaller items? And then at the end of every day, whatever time you sign off your work, half an hour before, spend it reviewing how your day was and planning for the next day. This keeps you very focused and very organized. Today I plan to do ABCD. What did I actually do? Okay, what do I need to do tomorrow? Because maybe what you did today will feed into what you need to do tomorrow. But if you deliberately set out time to plan, then you will find this really helps you to stay focused on the items that you need to do, and maybe also draws your attention to things that shouldn't be on your to-do list. There are so many different types of apps out there that can help you manage time, manage email, manage appointments. Find something that works for you. So rather than you having bits and pieces of paper all over the place, sometimes you find somebody has 3 diaries. How do you manage? I have this diary for this and another diary for that, and now just managing your diaries becomes a whole task. Try and have everything together rather than one diary for home, one diary for work, one diary for the children. If you centralize all your things, it just helps to keep your schedules much easier to manage. The other tip I'd like to share with you, manage your email. Sometimes you have so much work email going on, and especially if you have set an alert, every few seconds something is pinging on your machine or on your phone. How do you concentrate? So discipline yourself to check your emails only certain times of the day. So when you start your day, probably start You can open your email just to see, is there some message that has come in that is very urgent and important? If not, get something major done. Come and check your email, do some work, go back and check your email. So you can say maybe over the course of your day, you set out maybe 3 to 5 specific timings of when you will check your email. And you find this helps to keep you very focused. But the other thing is things that have sound alerts, you really need to manage them, because those are terrible as far as focusing on your work that you need to do. That also applies, of course, to text messages. It applies to your time on social media. If you keep specific times for checking and going online and doing all that, that really helps you to keep focused on the things that you need to get done. At the same time, try and touch a piece of paper only once. One of the challenges we have to being productive and managing a busy schedule, you touch a piece of paper, you realize this will take too much work, you put it down, you touch another one, you put it down, you spend your whole day shuffling papers back and forth, and at the end of the day, you're tired and you've done nothing. Try and touch a piece of paper once. And if you know that this item, is it for me to deal with? Is it something I can deal with now? Get it done. If it is something that needs somebody else to collaborate with you, engage with them, let that piece of paper move. If it needs to move away from you, let it move with whatever instructions or agreement of what happens to that piece of paper next. If it is something that needs to go on your list of important but not urgent, because it needs that much more time, then you need to put that on your list so that you know specifically when you will do that, and that then has a specific time slot allocated for it. But shuffling papers all around your desk or your office or your house, that will not help you get your work done. It is also like arranging clothes in the home. You take one item, instead of putting it away in the wardrobe, you're just shuffling it from one room to another, and at the end of the day, your house is just a mess, and you actually have not achieved much. So try and touch an item once and deal with it before you move on to something else. So viewers, at this point, we will take a break, and when we come back, we'll look at a few more tips of how we can help ourselves to manage a busy schedule. Viewers, welcome back to Aspire. My name is Sumaya Hassan, and this is part 2 of today's session, where we are talking about tips to help us manage our busy schedules. So when we're talking about meetings, the first thing you need to ask yourself, is this meeting necessary? Do you need to physically meet with people for you to discuss the item? Is it actually something that an update by email or some other form of update would be more than sufficient, rather than you having to physically meet with somebody just to give them an update, which you could easily have done by sending an email, for example? And then you should also ask yourself, particularly if there's a lot of travel involved, is it a meeting that can be held through one of the online platforms? Could you have an online meeting where you're all calling in and actually have that meeting in that way? Do you need to physically mobilize to go to that meeting? Now, I'm not suggesting you do that every time, because being able to connect with people, of course, has its own advantages, but do really look, as far as helping us to improve our schedules, on your meetings, whether they really are necessary and whether you really need to be moving up and down. If you find that, yes, you still do need to have a meeting, then be very clear on how long, what is the agenda of this meeting. If somebody is inviting you for a meeting, insist that they send you an agenda for purposes of your planning. At the same time, if you are the one calling for a meeting, don't just call for a meeting with a very general, I want us to talk about. Send an agenda so that people come and they prepare. The problem with not having an agenda for the meeting is, number one, people come there completely unprepared, and therefore perhaps you cannot make any decisions because people didn't know what the issues are you wanted addressed. Number two is, it then ends up being a reading forum where all of you are sitting there looking at the documents that have been circulated there for the first time, and instead of you meeting to discuss and agree, you're meeting to read. Is that really what the purpose of the meeting should be? So have that very clearly, and one very effective way that you can do is actually against each item on the agenda, put a column indicating time. How long are you anticipating each item on the agenda to start? So even as you open the meeting, you draw the attention of the other participants to how long you anticipate this meeting to be. And hopefully that helps everybody stay focused on having a meeting that is scheduled to take so much time, so that then you can all move on to the rest of your day. And you really, of course, every once in a while you have matters that are very involving and require more of your time, but you really shouldn't be having day-long meetings as your regular practice. What you probably will have there is the law of diminishing returns kicking in, and you're sitting there, and with every passing minute you're getting less and less productive. The other thing you may want to do is to have some meetings as standing meetings. You don't have to sit down for all meetings, because that in itself can be a process that can lead to a lot of relaxation and a lot of other chit chat before you come to the serious matters. If this is a quick meeting, because we just need to come and have a quick huddle, discuss something, agree and move, why don't you have a standing meeting? You don't need to sit every single time. And guess what? You can actually have a walking meeting. Have you ever had a walking meeting? If you're having a one-on-one meeting with somebody, why don't you go for a walk together? Let's go for a walk, 20-minute walk, and I want us to discuss A, B, C, D. You get to stretch your legs. You get to go out and have a little bit of fresh air. You get to spend time with a colleague in a different environment, which is great for helping build, the relationship at the office, whether you're discussing something that you agree on or whether you've been having a huge issue with your colleague that you need to resolve. Having a walking meeting can be a very good way to build very many different objectives into one item. So next time you're looking at having a meeting, a one-on-one, try a walking meeting. You'll be surprised. You may just find that it's actually very productive. The other thing, try and arrange some of your meetings to be back-to-back. Why? Because the mobilization and demobilization, sometimes you find the time in between can actually end up quite wasted if you're not being careful about how you manage it. And this is especially if you have gone to another area for a meeting. So if you've had to go out of your normal area where you're based and had to go maybe to a different part of the town for a meeting, why don't you have all the meetings that you need to have maybe for that week in that part of town on that same afternoon? Rather than today you've gone all the way to the other side of town for one meeting, day after tomorrow you're going back there again for another meeting. Why don't you try and arrange them one after the other? So you go there once, you deal with all your meetings, you come back there. This way you'll save yourself a lot of time, especially if you're in a place with a lot of traffic. Instead of constantly being on the road, mobilizing and demobilizing, then you manage yourself much better in that particular way. The other thing to help you be productive, on the way to or from meetings, the time that you spent stuck in a jam, don't let it be a time of frustration and screaming and cussing all the other drivers on the road because of how much they are delaying you. Use that time productively. Put something in that you can listen that is spiritually uplifting, something that maybe is an audio book. You're actually listening to a book, you're learning something new, you're listening to a podcast, you're listening to a lecture, you're listening to the Quran, whatever it is, but have your traffic time be productive time. Otherwise, it's just angry time. So even by the time you get to your meeting or from your meeting, the time to and from, you've used it so productively, you actually don't feel like it was a waste. You appreciate the investment in yourself that you have done by using that particular time productively. At the same time, consider also the items that you have which are in between, the small little chunks of time that if you're not careful, you will waste, and if you're careful, you can use them very nicely. So we've talked about traffic. What about queues? Sometimes you find yourself in a queue, you're waiting to be served at a particular place, there's a long queue ahead of you. You could be at the doctor's, you could be at a place where you're going for the meeting, but maybe there are various other agendas maybe before you are being called in, whatever the case is. that time in the queue is a wonderful time for you to do something very productive. Don't let it go to waste by you sitting there thinking, oh, I'm just here killing time. You can't kill time. Time will continue to be there. It was created as such, but what you're doing is wasting your time and an opportunity for you to do something else. You'd be surprised if you use that time to read your Quran, how much you'll get read from utilizing the time in a queue, or how many emails you're able to answer from those 5-10 minute slots when you're in between and waiting to be called maybe from your queue. So don't immediately, every time you find yourself in a queue, go to social media and waste your time on that. Use that as productive time. And over the course of a day, if you've had 4-5 such times, anything between 5 to 10 minutes, easily 1 hour could go just like that if you're not careful. Or that 1 hour could be invested in reading a book. Every time you find yourself in between, you've read 2-3 pages. By the time you realize you've actually finished a book just from that in-between time that is adequately utilized. Prepare yourself by decluttering. Is your desk or your work environment full of things that you feel you can barely breathe because it's just so busy? There could be a lot of things on your work, on your desk or in your workspace that shouldn't be there, but that are preventing you from even being able to have the peace of mind to think because it's just so cluttered. Spend 5-10 minutes decluttering. Paper that doesn't need to be there, files and boxes that don't need. Keep your work environment clean. It almost enhances the flow of air there and just makes you feel so much more, ready to tackle the task that needs your attention. If you're in the kitchen, for example, and your sink is full of dirty dishes, the counter is full of dirty dishes, you go in there, you actually feel overwhelmed, and you've gone there to make something, you feel overwhelmed. But if you spend a few minutes even before you start, clean out your sink, wash everything, clear your counters, walking into a kitchen that is just spotlessly clean makes you want to actually spend time there and cook. You just feel the environment is right. So spend time decluttering to enable you be much more productive in the things that need your time. If you are working on something, this is another tip, and it doesn't have a deadline or a timeline, give yourself one anyway. So don't say, oh, well, nobody asked me for a particular timeline by when I must hand this over. So you'll just drag it out forever. Give yourself a timeline. I haven't been asked, but I have planned for myself tomorrow 4 p.m. I will have finished this thing. That's my timeline, inshallah, and work towards that. You're just so much more productive when you give yourself timelines than letting things just drag and drag and drag and drag. And you will find, interestingly, especially when you don't do that, or you think you have all the time in the world to do something, you never get it done. Someone once said, if you want something done, give it to a busy person. What does that mean? It means this person has to schedule things in and plan. And for that reason, things get done. But the person who feels, oh, I have all the time in the world to get this done, many times may not even get around to doing this. So give yourself a timeline for when you will finish every item on your to-do list so that you make it productive. Another way to manage your busy schedule is by deliberately giving yourself breaks. At the end of the day, you're human. You will get tired. Pretending that you can work like Superman or Superwoman the whole day is a recipe for you to just not be very productive. But have that as a part of your schedule. I will do 1, 2, 3 items, and then I will take a 10-minute break. I'll go for a walk, I'll stretch my legs, I'll have a glass of water, I'll have an apple, I'll check my emails during that time, I'll reply to messages. Whatever the case is, plan out your schedule to include breaks, because that way you are then, it also motivates you to go very hard on what you're doing now, knowing that there is a break coming up where you can take a break and you can ease and relax a little bit before you go into the next task or item that you have planned out for yourself. At the same time, if you are having an item that you know can derail your productivity, have other options. so that you don't find yourself in a situation where you don't have a plan B and your entire project has now collapsed, maybe because you needed a particular person and they are not available at that particular time, so you feel your whole project has collapsed. No. If you have broken down particular major project into specific components, it means if what I needed for this component is not immediately available to me now, I can still use my time productively by going on to the next item, for example, or using an alternative. So be creative and give yourself backup for items that are very, very important to enable you not to waste your productive time when you find that there is something that is derailing your a particular component of your project. You could be working in an environment that is an open plan office. And this makes it difficult for you to focus on the things before you because somebody is talking there very loudly. Somebody else there is, always scraping their chair back and forth. Somebody else there has a group. Somebody likes to turn on the volume on whatever it is that, they may be working on or listening to, and it's distracting. And you're in an environment that's very, very distracting. So what can you do? There are a number of things you can do. And in another session of Aspire, we may specifically focus on how to be productive in open work environments. But for this session, in terms of helping us to manage our busy schedules, if you're in an environment that you know ends up being noisy, why don't you invest in noise cancelling headsets? Because you are in that space and you can't physically move. Maybe the company cannot give you your own office, or it cannot give you a desk in a separate place. Invest in some headsets. When you put them on, or some earplugs, blocks out the noise around you, and then you can focus. And when people see the earplugs are in, they know that is their cue that this is my do not disturb period. I'm doing some very serious focused work. After that, you can come. It also helps you help your teammates not interrupt you if you're doing something that really needs your focused attention. It is also important to ensure that you manage how you and your behavior could be preventing somebody else from achieving the items on their busy schedule. See, what we've been talking about so far is you making yourself more productive by managing your busy schedule. And this also includes managing people who could be interrupting you, whether through too many meetings or interruptions, when you're actually working, and phone calls and texts. But what about when you are the interruption? Remember to take these tips and the other way around, so that you ensure you are not that person that people are trying to put a do not disturb notice against, because you're always interrupting people. You're always the one texting people, and sometimes there are people who are not sensitive at all. Somebody will send you a message, 2 a.m. somebody wakes you up because they were reading something online and they felt it was very inspiring and they should share, and they have completely interrupted your thought. Or somebody calls you at all sorts of odd hours, not because it's urgent, but just because they felt that, for them it wasn't an issue. So you don't be that person that is constantly interrupting people just because, you felt, I wanted to update you on something that really wasn't important for that time of the day, when you know that people are very busy, doing the things that they're doing at that hour of the day. Now, as we wind up, one of the other things that I would like to say to help manage a very busy schedule, and so that you are also not the reason for destabilizing other schedules, if you commit to something, really try not to cancel at the last minute unless you don't have a choice. It can be very, very difficult. Somebody has arranged to have a meeting with you at 10 o'clock. 9:59 is when you send a message to say, I'm sorry, I can't come for the meeting because, I'm running late in something else. And did you only realize at 9:59 that you were running late? By then, especially if that meeting was to take place outside of the person's office, they have probably already arrived where you are supposed to meet. You have destabilized their day. You have really thrown their own schedule, into a mess. And you could have told them earlier so that they don't actually stop whatever else they were doing, or they rearrange their day as appropriate in light of your cancellation. Now, I'm not saying don't cancel. Of course, things come up every once in a while and you have to cancel. But when are you canceling so that you're giving the other person reasonable time to readjust your program? Remember their program, rather. And remember also, if you are known as a person who constantly cancels on people, or somebody who says, I will turn up and then doesn't, you lose your trust. So now, even when you do turn up, or when it is something important that you need people to be there, they will say, but, so-and-so never keeps their word. They always cancel at the last minute, and they don't trust you to be able to be there when you said you will be, and they just don't take the meeting or whatever arrangement they had with you or they were supposed to have with you seriously. So, as we look at the tips on how to help us manage our busy schedules, let's also remember not to be the reason why other people are not managing their busy schedules because of interruptions from us, because of us not keeping our word, because you don't reply to messages and so they don't know what is really happening around something, because you turn up unprepared or you turn up late, or because you don't plan and therefore you create a crisis for others. So don't let your lack of planning become a crisis either for yourself or for others. Just by spending a bit of time pre-planning your week, and at the end of the day, reviewing your day and planning for the next day, you may find that your productivity increases in ways that are tremendous, and that even though your schedule is busy, it is productive. And at the end of the day, when you wind up, you can actually look back with satisfaction that, alhamdulillah, I have actually managed to achieve concrete things in what I was doing today. Jazakumullah khairan, viewers. This is the end of today's Aspire show. I look forward to you joining us again in another session of Aspire next week, inshallah. Until then, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.